Hi, this is Marina from Frocks Frolics, and in this video I'm going to show you how to sew the Connie top for your doll. In this video we're going to do the Connie top. It comes together with the Bonnie skirt as a bundle. If you want to have both of them, if you just have the one of them, of course you can do that as well. The Connie and Bonnie is also available for girl sizes, so you can make the perfect me and my doll outfits. So let's get started and have a little look at what this doll top actually looks like. We have here a really nice insert, which actually you can leave out or you can put in. You could just go straight across or with this little dip here. And then you've got the option to put in some really nice embellishment, either lace or, you know, even stretch lace. I've seen some beautiful lace placed just straight down the middle and then some pearls on top. So embellish away here. You can do whatever you like. I'm so excited about what you're going to do with this. And unlike the girls' top, which had buttonholes in here, you don't necessarily have to put them in. If you want a really good practice, of course you can do that, but for this one I've just sewn them on, and you slip this whole thing on over the legs. It's easy then, I know, really quick to sew. There's a few things that are different with this little top here. What I've done is, instead of finishing it off really neatly, we're just overlocking and turning in the lower edge. That's the main difference between this and the girls one, and I hope you really enjoy that. It's dead easy to make, and it's a really good learning experience for everyone that wants to do that. And if you then want to move on to the girls one, as you can see blended in here, it's modeled by Magdalena. She did that really well. So beautiful, and her mum Ella took all the photographs, so thank you, Ella. And you can get both of them, of course, as well. So let's get started and put this beautiful little top together. We're starting with the front. Now the front you need to cut twice, one time in shell and one time in lining. Now I'm cutting it in the same fabric because that's simply easiest for me here. And then when you look at this, you can see the line is either with a dip or without. You can make either or. Then here we've got the little trim that goes on here. It's just been tucked under. Then we also need to put on a little bit of lace, if that's what we want to do. And I'm putting my lace on either side here. And of course that needs to go on before I do the trim. And then I can also do the little bit of lace here with the trim. So next we're going to look at the flutter sleeve. Now it's got a wider edge actually. Let's move this over. And the wider one is the front. Just make sure you put a snip there. If you are hemming the flutter sleeve, so you turn in again, then of course that's easiest to do on the straight side. But if you're doing what we're doing here, which is just simply overlocking the whole lot and then turning in, then I would definitely do that on the curved side and gather on the straight side of the flutter sleeve. So it really depends what you're doing. If you're just putting bias binding on the edge, then definitely use the curved edge for the bias binding. And then we've got here our strap, and again it has a front and a back, and we need a pair. So again I would put a little snip in the front just so you know which one is which, and then that will sit on here like that with the open side to the outside, and of course it's got the flutter sleeve in there. So it's actually quite simple. If you put it on like that, it's going to go the wrong way. So you know that your strap needs to face outwards, not inwards, when you put it on, yeah, to lie right. But it really is very simple. You can't really go wrong once you've got the flutter sleeve on there. It's actually pretty obvious how they have to go on. Then we've got the back here that is just simply folded over, and then we've got the elastic inserted in there, and that's absolutely fine. And we want the seam to be in the center when we're done, and we only have one bit of elastic to go in there for different tops. And then you can put buttons on in the end. So if you take your strap again, and we're just going to simulate that going on there. So if that's sewn on, hang on, like that, and then it kind of wraps around and then comes to the back like this. See, that edge will sit perfectly, and you can then put it under and or over and just sew a button on. You don't really need to work buttonholes for this. Now the first thing to do is to sort of finger iron down the center of your front piece so you know where the center is, and then we're going to put the lace on. So you just want to put the lace on either side. Now mine had some little pearls on there, so I needed to make sure that they weren't in the way, so I picked mine off. You can see that the top and bottom flower doesn't have a little pearl on it, so you can use that sort of thing, but you need to make sure that they don't get in the way. And then I'm just going to put a few pins in there to secure it, and we're just simply going to sew them on the sewing machine. I'm just top stitching that, and it doesn't have to be all that pretty. As long as it holds it down, it's fine. So here I've moved my sewing needle all the way over to the right, so I could just about catch it without getting into the way of those little pearls. Same on the other side, coming back up. Now we're going to put the trim on. So the trim needs to line up with the top edge, you know, rough edges on top of each other, and the right side obviously is facing up, can't be any different. And if you want to put a little bit of lace underneath it, now's the time. It's really simple. I mean, experts could also sew that lace to the trim before, but I think it's much easier to do it like that, especially if you are just learning how to sew. And so we're just going to stitch that down as well now. And I'm just going close to the edge, and I tend to have a longer stitch length when I top stitch, so 3 or 3.5, whereas we're sewing with a stitch length of 2.5 generally. Excellent. Secure your stitches. Going over the top edge as well, just so it can't get away from me. And now I'm going to do my flutter sleeve. I've serged the rounded edge, and I'm just going to top stitch that down, which is why I didn't do that on the straight edge, which is what I would do if I'd hemmed it properly, but I'm not doing that. There's no need to do this, right? So we're doing the curved side, which is a little bit nicer because of course it is a little bit more volume because it is curved. So do the same on the other side. There we go. Turn it in and top stitch just right on your overlocking, and really just turn it in, just not a centimeter or anything like that, just the width of your overlocking or serging, and that tends to be 0.6 centimeters. And here you can also see blended in how lovely it looks if you just bind that edge. That's also really nice. We're doing that with a tilly top, so that's to come as well. You can find that in the doll collection, and you can watch the tilly top video as well if you want to see how that's done. Now I'm going to put my gather threads on the other side. You can actually at the back end of your flutter sleeve lock in the stitches if you like, and just leave them hanging on the front edge. And we always want to gather a little bit more on the front edge, which is why I would, if you secure and lock the stitches in, do it please at the back end. I'm leaving it here on both sides. That just means I have to secure my stitches with a pin on either side when I put them on. Right, so now we need to make the flutter sleeve fit the little strap, and I've ironed them in half lengthways, so you need to do that, and then just gather your flutter. There we go. And then you wrap your thread around a pin which sits vertical to your seam in a figure of 8, and then that can't go anywhere. Then we're putting it onto the edge of the sleeve, right sides facing. And again, it's not important which side you choose, as long as you do mirror image, so you do the other one exactly the opposite, that's all. And you can see here that I'm moving up my gathers a bit. I want least gather towards the back end, because at the lower end we're also going to put a button on, and you might want to put a buttonhole in. You can do that, and then it would be like in the way. So we're having a tiny little bit less gather down there, which you can see quite nicely here. Now I repeat that process on the other side and make sure that they're both mirror image to each other. and then I can go and sew those together. We're sewing right through the center of the serging. You can adjust your gathers a little bit if you like, you know, if they need it. And now I can remove one of the threads, the one that is facing into the flutter sleeve. That can come out, take the bobbin thread out, and the other one will lift off automatically. Wonderful, there we go. And then if you like, you can also iron this before you start doing the rest of it. You could give that a little bit of a press. Now I'm going to close the back by just folding it over. And see, I'm just sewing that together. So the seam allowance is folded in on the top and it stays out on the other side, on the side that lies lower down, of course. And then once that is all finished, I just tuck that in, and that gives me a really nice, neat finish here. And in fact, that's exactly the same as with the girls' Connie top, and the instructions there take a little bit more time for all this. So if you have got that pattern as well, you can work with those instructions for the flutter sleeves completely. That is exactly the same. Some bits in a minute will be slightly different. There we go. And I just pin that in, make sure it's nice and straight. And then we're going to top stitch all the way around. And I'm also going to put a double thread through my corner here, which helps me sew the corner because I've got something to hold on to, which is really important. Close to the edge. And you can see that now. I'm going to hold on to that double thread. So I go right to the point, needle down, turn, press a foot back down, and then I can just pull it so that the fabric doesn't get sucked into the machine, which it really likes doing in these points, right? And I'm just going to get the next one ready. There, you see, it's all ready. Turn again and sew down the other side. There we go. You might have to stretch that a little bit because if you're working with different types of fabric, they react differently to, you know, being pinned together. So if you stretch it really nice while you're sewing, don't pull on it, then that'll work really well. Now we're going to work the back. So fold over your back, sew it together with a seam allowance of 1 centimeter. And then we're going to iron the seam apart as best we can. We want the seam to sit in the center and not at the bottom or the top, because that makes it not quite as smooth and it looks way nicer when it's done. So here you can see the seam is in the center, and then I'm going to take my elastic and push it through. And leave a little bit of the elastic standing on either side. And if you do top stitching like I did, then actually you might want to add a little bit to the elastic on either side in the measurements so that you can have more standing, so you've got something to pull when you're starting to top stitch this. I did that on the Tilly top. Again, you can watch that as well because the back's exactly the same on both those patterns. So now I've secured both sides with a pin, and then I'm going to top stitch that too on both sides, and I was also top stitching it down, and in hindsight I think I top stitched almost foot width, and I think it should have been just over 1 centimeter. It would have sat a little bit nicer, but for doors clothes it really doesn't matter too much. So what I would say to you is use 1 centimeter, that's 3/8 of an inch. So use that when you are sewing down the side. You can clearly see I do foot width here, and that it's quite hard to have something to hold on to because my elastic is literally sitting in the side. So if you say, oh well, you know, I need something to hold on to, just make the elastic 1 centimeter longer for either side, so that's 2 centimeters longer than it's actually described in your description, and then you
let that hang out either side, and that makes it easier to work it. But I mean, it was fine as it was. Now we're going to close the underarm, and after that we can put our flutter sleeves in. I've actually changed the technique to the girls' Connie top. We're not closing the hem at this point. We're only closing the underarm. And I worked that out afterwards, kind of thing. So you can see it here pinned, but you can completely ignore that. All we're closing here is the underarm. That's all. And you'll see why. It's really fiddly if you try to close the lower edge as well. Of course you could do that, but it's not very clever. And now I'm going to stick in my flutter sleeves, and of course with a hem open, that's really easy to do. As now I'm pulling it through the side seam here, and then in the next clip, it's open at the hem. There we go. Just move that right into the corner. There you go. And that's it. On the other side as well. You live and learn. I've learned so much making door clothes. Like every video I've made, it just keeps getting better and better, because you really have to rethink some stuff. And on the more complicated items, it's definitely, you know, there's things that I had to change to make it work for a door. So now we're just closing across the top. And here you can use foot width seam allowance. You don't need to use a centimeter. Although it doesn't matter if you did use a centimeter either. And with that done, you can see it's now open at the hem, and that is so much easier, right? It's lovely. And at this point, if you wanted to, you could also put a little lace trim on the hem if that's what you wanted to do before you do anything else. Now we're going to put the back on. So you want to take the back so that the seam is facing you, so you see that. And then you place it right into that edge here and sandwich the back between the front lining and the front shell. In my case, of course, it's the same fabric. That made more sense for this top. It's exactly like I made the girls' top, same fabric. Put everything edge to edge, and then we put a pin in there. Awesome. Now we go over to the sewing machine and we'll just stitch the side seams down, and that will sandwich in the back. Fabulous. Done. Now I can cut back my seam allowance. Please don't cut the seam allowance of the sides back. That makes things much, much harder. That's not necessary. Just cut back the underarm. And then if you wanted to, you could also snip it a little bit and cut across the corner here, but leave the side seams standing. Now you want to turn it, work out all the edges. You might want to give this a little press as well. It's never a bad idea. Now at this point, you also could put the little frill on it. And if you let that run out to the edge, then in turn, you could just then tuck in the lining and sew that by hand to the front. But here we're making it super, super simple, and we're just serging that bottom edge. You can see it here, it's all serged, and then I just top stitch all the way around the bodice, which secures that serged hem, of course, and it looks really nice all the way around to have it all top stitched. And for that, you turn it. You always want to work from the inside, whatever you do. So you can see that here, I've turned it so the outside of my top lies on the inside, kind of thing. And then I can sew around. Again, my stitch length is 3.5. And you can also turn this top and the tilly top into a dress, and Rabia has done that here for her daughter, who's like loving this dress. Rabia says it's her absolute favorite, and we're going to do a hack for that this summer as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you get the notification when the new videos are up and you don't miss it. It's actually really, really sweet.
And now we've done this, all we need to do is secure the straps. And what I do is I pin them on so they, sit so they fit the doll. I would just put it on the doll really. And then just make sure that you put them on so that they're the same on either side. And here you can see with the tilly top, I've actually put buttonholes in to secure this. That's really nice as well, but it isn't necessary. You don't have to do that. You can just stitch them in and it will just slip on. So all I have to do is sew that on, and I quickly did that and we're done. And it goes so well with a bunny skirt that you can see here. And of course it's all available for your girl as well. Have you got doll fever yet? I love these. This is actually an American doll, just in closing to say, but if you are watching this from any other country and there's a different doll, I've got the measurements on my website on every listing. So if you just measure your little doll and see how that matches, then you should be absolutely okay. You can make this with Götz doll and all sorts of dolls. I have seen people do it with other dolls already and it works beautifully. And if you want to go straight onto the skirt now, you can click the link, which is going to come up in a minute, and you can see how that is sewn together. And I see you next time when we sew some more doll clothes. Bye for now.